Welcome to Saturday. This week's theme is to review one of your favorite books, and while I don't have any of the copies of my books here with me, um, I would have to say that one of my favorite series is the Dark Tower series by Stephen King. It's not a typical Stephen King book. It's not a typical, horror, weird, bizarre type. I mean, it is pretty bizarre. And there's a little bit of horror. But it's basically a horror, sci-fi, fantasy, western in a way. And I think it's really amazing. It's basically Stephen King's answer to The Lord of the Rings. It's a journey story, and in the end, um, no spoilers. In the end, Stephen King basically says it's not about the ending, it's about the journey. And so at the very end, once the main character, Roland, his entire goal throughout the series is to reach the Dark Tower, which is the nexus of the entire space, time, universe, etc., blah, blah, blah. It's everything in one. And so he wants to reach the tower and reach the top of it to find out what's there. Once he reaches it, the book stops, which I think is amazing. Except that Stephen King adds an addendum to the end, saying that he knows some people get pissed off that he didn't include what Roland found, and so he says it's all part of the journey. It's all the journey. The journey is what you're reading. You really don't need to know what's at the end. But for those of you who are curious and need to know, here it is. And I was baffled for about 2 weeks. I could not stop thinking about the ending. It was ridiculous. But it's basically a sort of pseudo-western that takes place in a parallel universe, um, about a character who, like I said, goes to um, find the Dark Tower, and along the way he meets different companions who come from New York City, our New York City, but from different time periods. One is from the 60s, one's from the 70s, one's from the 80s. And they all come together and they help Roland on his journey. And there's a lot of really, really, really weird stuff, a lot of really amazing literary references, and also, if you are a fan of Stephen King, a lot of his other books reference the Dark Tower. Like, basically, his universe, Stephen King's universe, is all connected, and they are all connected essentially to the Dark Tower universe. Um, so it's really interesting to be reading another Stephen King book and you come across something that was referenced in the Dark Tower, or you're reading the Dark Tower and there's something that was like Captain Trip from The Stand. So it's really cool, and I definitely recommend reading it. Some people say that it gets worse towards the end, but honestly, I was captivated the entire way through. The first book is a little hard to get through simply because it kind of jumps right in, and so you don't understand the terminology. They have their own language that they speak. Um, you don't really understand the world and what's going on. But in the second book, it really clears it up, and I was hooked after the second book, and I could not wait to read the rest of them. So I honestly recommend these books because they are amazing. And not to mention, they are going to be making a mini-series. I believe they'll be released next year, and I really hope that they do a good job casting because these characters are amazing and this book is amazing. These books, multiple, there's seven books, magic number. And what's really cool, I was about to end this, but what's really cool is that each story is not a standalone story, kind of like Harry Potter is, where beginning is Harry's at school, or Harry's at home, then he goes off to school, then he comes back, and that's it. You know, it's like a start and a finish. This one, it's basically like you could take all 7 novels, squish them into one big novel, and it would flow seamlessly. But of course, that would be way too big. Anyway, I completely recommend this book. Go out and at least try The Gunslinger. If you don't like The Gunslinger, try the next one, and I think that you'll like it. So, that is my book review for the week, and I will see you next week.